Dr. Brooks, you're terminated. Leave your ID and your coat on the desk. Immediately. The words echoed through the grand lobby of Elmsworth Hospital like a dry slap. Everything stopped. Footsteps slowed. Nurses froze mid-injection. Patients looked up. The whole hospital held its breath. Imani Brooks Kingston, dressed in the standard blue scrubs, her cornrow braids tied neatly back, stood still at the center of the storm of stares. Her eyes did not flinch. She did not plead. She did not bow. Director Franklin Boyd, white, with eyes cold as steel, pointed toward the door. You've committed a serious breach of protocol. You used hospital resources to save a nobody, someone without insurance. Shameful. I saved a life, not a file, Imani replied. She calmly removed her ID badge, folded her white lab coat, and placed them on the desk. Her face revealed no emotion, but the fire in her eyes made the entire lobby feel suffocatingly silent. Elmsworth General was a symbol of elite healthcare, high-end, cutting-edge, and ice-cold. Soundproof glass walls, imported equipment, hallways as bright and sterile as a five-star airport lounge. But beneath the gleaming surface lay a harsh hierarchy. Patients with premium insurance were fast-tracked, while Black patients, the homeless, or anyone without the right card, were quietly pushed aside. Imani had been here for 12 years. She knew every face, every emergency delayed, every brilliant colleague passed over for not matching the brand image. In her tiny on-call room, she kept a photo of her and her mother, the woman who once mopped these very floors. She didn't fight to climb the ladder. She fought to protect those the system was built to leave behind. But the moment she crossed that invisible line, risking everything to save a nameless man, the system struck back. Imani, 40, embodied quiet resolve. Every step in her life paved with labor, sacrifice, and the unshakable belief that medical ethics were not up for debate. Her cornrows were always tight, her posture upright, her voice calm, but never ignored. She once saved a premature mother giving birth in the hospital parking lot during a blackout. She had trained many young doctors, most of them people of color, those often treated like assistants rather than professionals. Franklin Boyd, the director, believed in numbers and efficiency. Compassion? Not so much. To him, breaking protocol was an absolute offense, regardless of whether a patient lived or died. Malik Turner, the security guard, once a patient himself, whose son Imani had saved after the ER initially refused treatment. Today, he was the one assigned to escort her out. 3 weeks earlier, on a rainy night near the end of Imani's shift, a man stumbled into the ER, covered in blood and mud. His shirt was shredded, pulse erratic, pupils blown wide. He managed only 2 words. Help. Me. Patricia, the receptionist, looked up and shook her head. No ID, no insurance, no admission. Imani dropped to her knees immediately. A quick assessment showed signs of a grade 2 brain hemorrhage. She knew the clock. 5 minutes of delay could mean death. Prep trauma room 2. Page the on-call physician. We need an emergency intervention. You'll get fired for this, Patricia whispered. Then let them fire me. But I'm not letting this man die in front of me. She didn't know who he was, but she knew exactly who she was and why she took this oath. 3 weeks passed. The man was transferred to another hospital after waking from surgery. Imani was suspended pending investigation, and then terminated. On day 22, after that fateful shift, she returned home carrying termination papers and the pitying glances of colleagues who once called her the queen of the ER. That night the phone rang, an unfamiliar number, a male voice, crisp, professional. We're looking for Dr. Imani Brooks. This is she. The man you saved was Mr. Cyrus Hale, Chief Executive Officer of Hale Medical Group. He regained full consciousness last week, and he's asked to see you the moment he was strong enough to get out of bed. Imani's grip on the phone tightened. That name wasn't unfamiliar. One of the most powerful figures in America's private healthcare sector. He said, "You didn't just save a patient, you restored his faith in medical integrity. He wants to thank you, but it's not just about gratitude. He needs to speak in person. There's something bigger, something that needs to be said." Imani sat silently. Her hand rested on the old lab coat, washed but still faintly stained with blood from that night. Images flashed through her mind of patients turned away, of children denied entry because their mothers filled out the wrong form. "I don't know what to say. You just need to come. He'll say the rest." She nodded, the same way she had nodded in the face of life and death moments in the ER. But this time, it wasn't just one life on the line. It was an entire system. Imani arrived at the meeting location, a private boardroom in the Hale Medical Group headquarters. To her surprise, the first to greet her was Thomas Reynolds, Hale's personal attorney. Mr. Hale is still recovering at home, but he gave specific instructions. Work with Ms. Brooks. Help her expose the truth at Elmsworth. Reynolds handed her a thick folder. Inside, copies of medical records, hospital denial letters, and donation receipts, tracing funds from Elmsworth Hospital to the city mayor's re-election campaign. "We don't want revenge. We want reform. Through truth." That night, Imani sat on her old wooden kitchen chair. Her laptop screen glowed, but her eyes were fixed on a new message from Malik. "You need to hear this." Attached, a voice recording. She hit play. "That woman thought she was some kind of black Florence Nightingale. I've been waiting for a reason to get rid of her." Boyd's voice, clear as crystal. She said nothing, her hand tightened on the chair's arm. A part of her wanted to scream. Another part felt a strange calm, chilling in its steadiness. Imani reached for her phone. Her finger hovered over the number Reynolds had left her days ago. She dialed. "Hello?" His voice, steady and deep. "I'm ready," she said. "Good. Do you want to know where to start?" She looked out the window. Rain poured in sheets against the tin roof. "Number, I'll ask him that. In person," she said. And paused. "Where do we start?" Imani's question didn't carry a challenge. It was more like a quiet declaration of war. Yet Reynolds, the man in a gray suit sitting across from her, understood. This was the moment the system began to crack. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled a thick envelope from his leather briefcase and laid it gently on the glass table. "We start here, with the truth." Imani opened the file slowly. Her heartbeat echoed like a drum in her ears. Inside were names of patients who'd been denied care, internal emails, budget spreadsheets with restructuring justifications, and political donations. She looked up. These people, they're all people of color or uninsured. And all of them were pushed out, even in emergencies. No one screamed, no one cried, but it was the silence that made the air feel like it was strung with blades. "Imani," Reynolds said quietly, "from this moment forward, you're no longer a nurse. You're a living witness." The meeting room was on the 23rd floor of the Hale Medical Tower, headquarters of the largest private healthcare corporation in the country. Glass walls overlooked the financial district, but no one inside cared about the height or the view. On the large screen was an image of Elmsworth General, looking oddly small, fake even, like an old stage set from a miscast play. Reynolds clicked the remote. Data appeared. Patient intake charts, graphs overwhelmingly marked in red. Anyone without Type A insurance was filtered out. This isn't just classism. This is the monetization of life itself. Imani stood and stepped closer to the screen. Each face shown was a name she remembered. The elderly woman pushed out for quota exceeded. The boy whose heart surgery was delayed because paperwork wasn't complete. She placed her hand on the screen. "I stood inside that system, thinking silence was my only option." She turned to Reynolds. "But now I want to speak. Every detail. Thomas Reynolds, 54, was Hale's in-house legal counsel, but moved with the discretion of a federal investigator. Salt and pepper hair slicked back, tie always perfect, his voice deep and crisp like a recorder. He was the first person Cyrus Hale called upon waking, still aching from cranial surgery. The message was short. Find that woman and start pulling everything Elmsworth buried. Reynolds didn't need to ask why. He knew that when Cyrus asked in silence, it wasn't personal anymore. I've been investigating racial bias in healthcare for over 15 years, Reynolds said, but I've never seen a case strong enough to flip the system. Until you. Imani looked at him, a black man like her, but one who had climbed the white towers of the legal world. Different professions, same battlefield. And Mr. Cyrus? Still recovering, but he wants to meet you when the time is right. Reynolds handed her a list, names of former Elmsworth employees, doctors, technicians, nurses, who had either quietly resigned or were mysteriously pushed out. They're all people of color, immigrants, or from poor backgrounds. They knew something? Imani asked. They saw, but no one dared speak. She understood immediately. It wasn't because they didn't want to. It was because they knew the price of speaking up. So what's our first step? Reynolds nodded slightly. Build a witness file, record statements, gather evidence. And to do that, he looked up, we need someone to go first, someone who will begin with their own story. Imani took a deep breath. Her eyes blurred for a moment, not from weakness, but from knowing. Once this door opened, there would be no turning back. I'll tell it. From that night, from the moment I chose to save a man whose name I didn't even know. Outside, rain had begun to fall, but inside that room, a different storm was quietly forming. On the screen before them were recordings, email copies, financial flowcharts, all gathered by Hale Medical's Special Investigation Unit in just 10 days. Reynolds pointed to a diagram. Elmsworth didn't just discriminate based on insurance. They engineered a covert filtration system, starting with intake, triage prioritization, and finally, shifting blame to frontline workers. Imani's brow furrowed as she scanned a long list of former nurses who left without explanation. Most were Black or Latina women. I worked with her, she said, pointing to a name. She quit suddenly, said it was for personal reasons. But before that, she told me someone asked her to delay an emergency call because the patient didn't meet requirements. I didn't believe it then. Imani sat silently. For the first time, the things she'd once dismissed as overthinking were now concrete proof. Reynolds spoke in a low tone. You're the first who didn't stay silent, and the only one they couldn't bribe, threaten, or erase. Imani inhaled deeply. She wasn't used to being a witness. She knew how to handle bleeding lungs and failing hearts, not confidential depositions. But this time, she couldn't walk away. Reynolds placed a recorder on the table. We'd like to capture your testimony, starting from the night it happened, in your own voice. Imani nodded. She began, every detail. How the man collapsed on the cold hospital floor. Patricia's blank stare, the receptionist's resistance, the veiled threats, Boyd's table slam when she chose to push the patient into surgery. I didn't know who he was. I only knew, if I turned away, I'd no longer be worthy of wearing that coat. Imani paused, her voice rough, not from emotion, but because it had been so long since she allowed herself to speak it aloud. Reynolds said nothing. He just watched her, not as a witness, but as a survivor. The recording stopped. Imani leaned back in her chair, sweat forming at her nape despite the air conditioning. Reynolds shut off the device, eyes gleaming. We now have enough to launch an internal inquiry into Elmsworth. What about going public? Imani asked. Not yet. First, we'll reach out to those who've been discarded. Former staff, past patients, victims' families. We need to build a collective case, not a lawsuit, a full system profile. Reynolds slid another folder across the table. There are 3 key witnesses we need you to meet. A former cardiologist, a nurse transferred for speaking up in a meeting, and a patient, a young girl, denied entry. Imani nodded. She wasn't a lawyer, but she understood what needed to be protected and what could no longer be forgotten. Leaving the Hale medical offices, Imani paused at the steps. The afternoon sun lit the city in soft gold, catching the edges of her braids like a quiet halo. She was no longer the head nurse of Elmsworth, but for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel Powell. I recorded everything. The voice was steady, no trembling, no hesitation, just a clean, razor-sharp certainty, like a blade gliding across glass. In the secured basement of Hale Medical, Nina Carter, a young, brown-skinned tech who once worked at Elmsworth, opened her personal laptop. She plugged in the HDMI cable connecting to the large screen in front of the room. Everyone, Reynolds, Imani, the legal team, turned toward the display. No one blinked. On screen, the title appeared, Elmsworth Internal, Audio Surveillance Logs, Extracted. Imani looked at Nina, barely in her 20s, curly hair tied high, wearing a hoodie and headphones slung around her neck. She looked like a college IT senior. I didn't plan to keep any of it, but after the night they fired you, I'd had enough. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't hear what I heard. Nina hit play, and the truth began to leak. One clip at a time. Basement level B3 of Hale Tower was known to few. No nameplate, no hallway cameras, no sign of entry or exit. Only a steel door with triple-layer fingerprint security. Cyrus once used it to store high-security files, including past internal investigations. Now it had been reactivated as the covert command center for a campaign codenamed Elmsworth Redeemed. The room housed 4 workstations, 3 massive screens, and a wall covered in event timelines and portraits. Imani sat in the center chair. Before her, a list of names, people Elmsworth had quietly removed from the system. Each name carried pain, each one a dream smothered. She no longer wore the white coat, but her gaze carried the presence of everyone who had been discarded for their skin, their poverty, their inability to speak the language hospitals preferred. If this is a battlefield, Imani whispered, I didn't come here to surrender. Nina Carter, 24, had been an IT technician overseeing Elmsworth's security camera system for 2 years. Her mother, a Ghanaian nurse, was fired from that very hospital in 2007. Nina entered the field with one mission: observe, don't resist. But the night Imani was terminated, and later when she saw Boyd celebrating like he'd crushed a rebellion, something inside Nina snapped. I'd downloaded all logs from the past 3 months, not just video, the audio system too. Hallways, executive meetings, even the basement garage. Reynolds blinked. No one noticed? Nina smirked. Because they never imagined the IT girl knew where the cache overflow files were hidden. Imani looked at her. Nina's eyes burned. Young, sharp, focused. Not reckless rebellion, but rage, forged through intelligence. The first video began. Scene. 9th floor boardroom, where Elmsworth's executive committee held internal meetings. I'll say it again. If they don't have Tier A insurance, don't waste an ICU bed, said Boyd, his voice unmistakable. A second voice, female, colder. And if they push back? Cut hours, reassign, flag their files as non-compliant. Imani felt her fingertips go numb. Reynolds tightened his grip on his glasses. Nina didn't blink. The next clip, Patricia, the front desk receptionist, laughing. Some people were just born not to deserve free healthcare. Clip 3, Boyd again, this time speaking about Imani. That Brooks woman. Who does she think she is? I let her be for too long. She got loud. I was just waiting for an excuse. Imani froze. The room said nothing. Only the video played on, like a CT scanner cycling over the skull of a rotting system. Imani didn't look away, but her mind flooded with memory. The veiled warnings in meetings, the side eyes, the black nurses quietly resigning for cultural misalignment. She'd suspected, she'd sensed, but now it wasn't suspicion. It had evidence, voices, faces. Can we take this down? Nana asked, quiet but clear. We're not taking it down, Imani replied, eyes still on the footage. We're stripping it bare. Reynolds opened his laptop, sending the recordings to the legal team. At the same time, he opened a new witness list, 10 names willing to testify publicly. Imani saw it, Dr. Alvarez, the only physician who remained silent when she was fired. She exhaled, deep, heavy. When you're the only one who knows the truth, she said slowly, you feel crazy. But when many speak, it becomes thunder. The door opened. Dr. Miguel Alvarez stepped in, slim build, his white coat no longer bearing the Elmsworth name tag. Imani looked at him without judgment. She didn't need words. The shame in Alvarez's eyes said enough. I should have spoken up sooner, he said. I saw what they did to you. I saw the emergency assignment charts. White patients always got first pick for ICU beds. I stayed silent because I needed the job, for my family, for my permanent residency. No one condemned him. Everyone in the room knew this system didn't just discriminate, it threatened survival. But I'm ready now, Alvarez said, signing the witness affidavit. I want to be on the right list, even if I'm late. It was the first testimony from the inside, and from this point forward, Imani would no longer speak alone. Reynolds pulled out his phone. In a secure meeting with civil rights investigators, he shared the case file. In 15 minutes, all recordings, videos, and statements were encrypted and transmitted. They won't erase the trail this time, he said. At the same time, Imani opened her own laptop. She began drafting an email, not to the press, but to those Elmsworth had cast out, those who thought they were isolated casualties. Subject line: The truth needs us. Message: My name is Imani Brooks. I was fired for saving a life, but I won't let them erase the rest of us. Within 10 minutes, replies came. Maria, a nurse dismissed for failing front desk standards. A Nigerian resident doctor. A patient who survived but had been denied timely admission. The system wasn't just cracking, it was shedding its skin, piece by piece. Nightfall. Imani sat alone in the auxiliary command room on B3. Under soft amber light, she opened an envelope placed beside her laptop. Inside, a photo. She recognized it instantly. It was her, blood-stained, pressing her hand to the chest of that nameless man from that night. On the back, handwritten words, "If you had hesitated for even 1 second, I'd be dead." CH. She knew who sent it. Cyrus Hale didn't need to speak. His actions and silence were the message. Imani gripped the photo not from sentiment, but because the moment had come. The truth needed light. We're not just taking down Boyd, she whispered. We're burning down the system that built him. Style. Undercover boss plus black empowerment plus cinematic revenge. Total. Approximately 1,000 words, approximately 250 per section. Emotionally charged, cinematic twist, seamless transitions, no time skips. All the lights tonight will be on you, Patricia whispered, adjusting Director Boyd's tie. Boyd admired his reflection in the tall mirror, pleased with the image staring back. A successful white man, salt and pepper hair, draped in an expensive tuxedo, about to take the stage at the prestigious Vision of Care annual gala. They won't just applaud, he said, smirking. They'll beg me to stay for a record-breaking 8th term. He laughed aloud, completely unaware that the lights he so longed for would illuminate more than just him. They'd expose the shadows he'd buried for over a decade. While Boyd strutted into the grand ballroom under a halo of pretense, across the street in a hotel suite, Imani watched through binoculars, her eyes cold and focused. It's starting, she said to Reynolds. Stay on cue, live stream systems are connected. And in the stillness, the public unmasking, scripted like a theater act, was about to drop its curtain. The Belmont Grand Hotel shimmered under golden lights. The ballroom gleamed with white flowers, crystal wine glasses catching the light, and the rhythmic clack of designer heels paired with hollow compliments. At the center stage stood a massive LED screen, programmed to play a tribute video for the Director of the Year, Thomas Boyd. Guests included politicians, partner hospital executives, healthcare sponsors, and top medical journalists, all seated according to rank. A young reporter turned to Patricia, who was managing event media. Heard Elmsworth is launching a new free care initiative this year? Patricia smirked. We've always led in innovation, but some former employees just weren't equipped to keep up. At the far end of the room, disguised among the waitstaff, stood Malik Turner, a former Elmsworth security guard, now carrying a tray of champagne. On his lapel, a hidden camera. He gently pressed a button on his jacket. The live stream feed was ready. Thomas Boyd, the man who once threw Imani out of the hospital, now stood grinning like the world was his for the taking. Beside him stood Mayor Kendall, Boyd's cousin, who once accepted over $2 million from Elmsworth under the label of a community health fund. Behind them hovered Patricia, the veteran receptionist, who had routinely posted subtle jabs online, implying Imani brought it on herself. And then there were the ones behind the curtain. Malik, the former guard who once felt powerless. Naina, the IT technician, now seated at Hale Medical's control center with a laptop linked to every screen at the gala. Reynolds, the lawyer, seated among the crowd, his expression blank, unnoticed but lethal. And Imani, dressed in a deep navy suit, not walking into the ballroom, but waiting for the exact second. Each of them was a piece on the board. But this time, they weren't playing Boyd's game. He was playing theirs. On stage, the MC stepped into the spotlight. And now, the most anticipated moment of the evening, honoring the Executive of the Year, Mr. Thomas Boyd, CEO of Elmsworth General Hospital. The applause roared like thunder. Boyd stepped onto the stage, gazing down at the crowd like a crowned king. I'm proud to have led Elmsworth with one core principle: medical excellence through standardization. No bias, no emotions, just science and results. Backstage, Imani stood in the shadows, headset on, eyes on the control screen. Not yet, Reynolds said through the earpiece. Wait for him to say that line. On stage, Boyd raised his glass. We take pride in removing inefficiencies. And as a result, hospital profits have increased by 17% just this past quarter. There it is, Imani murmured. Go live. She pressed the button, and in an instant, the massive LED screen behind Boyd changed. On the massive screen, instead of the tribute video to Boyd, appeared a clip from the executive boardroom. If they don't have A+ insurance, don't waste an ICU bed. Push back against policy? Flag them, transfer them, push them out. The audio was crystal clear, Boyd's own voice. He whipped around in shock. The screen continued. Patricia laughing with another manager. Some people were just born not to deserve free medical care. The entire ballroom fell silent. Whispers rippled like crashing waves. A guest leaned toward Mayor Kendall. What the hell is going on? Kendall began to sweat. Boyd tried to maintain composure. There must be some technical... But then a familiar voice rang out. I am Imani Brooks, and this is the truth you need to hear. A new recording began, Imani's testimony from her sworn deposition. Her voice was low, steady, every word slicing through the air like glass through silence. That night, I saved a man with no name, no papers. I didn't know who he was. I only knew he was dying, and if I didn't act, he'd die right in front of me. All eyes turned to the screen, now appearing, the rejected medical chart of that man. Then, his face on the cover of a business magazine. Cyrus Hale, CEO of Hale Medical Group. Gasps replaced whispers. The entire room froze. On stage, Boyd stood rigid. Patricia looked as if the ground had vanished beneath her. The man Elmsworth labeled a nameless, ineligible emergency was the head of one of the most powerful healthcare corporations in America, Imani's recorded voice continued. If I hadn't broken protocol, he'd be dead. And that very act got me fired, humiliated, erased. The screen changed one final time. Boyd, grinning inside the boardroom. I've been waiting for a chance to get rid of that woman. She thinks she's somebody. At that moment, Boyd understood. There was no way out now. Footsteps echoed across the floor. A side door opened. Federal agents entered, badges visible. Thomas Boyd, you are under arrest for systemic racial discrimination, embezzlement of medical funds, and unlawful denial of emergency care. There was no applause, just one sound, the click of handcuffs snapping shut. Boyd protested, "You can't do this. This is a setup." A deep voice answered from within the audience. "No, this is the truth." Cyrus Hale stepped out from the center aisle, a scar still fresh on his forehead, dressed in a simple dark suit, no embellishment, yet every step tightened the breath of the room. And today, I announce, Hale Medical Group has acquired 62% controlling shares of Elmsworth General. Our first order of business is asking, where is your medical integrity? Only one person remained on stage, Imani. No one had called her forward. No one arranged the spotlight, but the light followed instinct and landed on her. Her blue tailored suit fit perfectly. Her voice rang out, not loud, but clear enough to pierce every barrier that once shielded lies. I'm not a hero. I'm just a black woman doing the job she was trained to do. I once believed staying silent was how we survived, but now I know truth only survives when someone stands up for it. The entire room rose to their feet, not by prompt, but because they couldn't remain seated. In the far corner, Naina wept silently. Malik whispered, "She doesn't need a microphone. She is the voice." The ballroom dimmed, but this time, the light no longer belonged to the powerful. It belonged to the woman who had once been cast out, and just walked back in, carrying only the truth. We'd like to offer you a position at Elmsworth. As interim director, Imani didn't respond immediately. Her hand rested on her glass, steady, but inside she didn't feel pride. She felt suspicion. Across from her, in a makeshift boardroom within Hale's transition headquarters, attorneys and board representatives watched her, as if waiting for a nod to erase the past. "It's an honorary title," one added. "You'll have full authority over staffing, case reviews, and the transition phase." Imani looked up. Transition or cleanup crew before being pushed back out. No one answered, and in that moment she understood. The battle with Boyd had been the prelude. The real enemy wasn't the man in front of the camera, it was those hiding behind it. Post-Boyd, Elmsworth looked like a body without a pulse. Staff whispered in corridors, patients exchanged wary glances, nameplates disappeared. The lobby's slogan, vision, value, vigor, had been stripped from the walls. No new director had been announced. Department heads acted as placeholders, but no one dared sign major decisions. The entire system felt like it was holding its breath. Imani returned, not in a white coat, but a sharp blue suit. Her new name badge read, Special Executive Advisor, Hale Medical Transition Unit. She walked past the abandoned ER rotation board, the same one she'd once been erased from. "This isn't reconstruction," she murmured to Reynolds beside her. "This is post-war." He nodded, surveying the wreckage like a general on scorched land. And post-war always requires hard choices. Alexander Sterling, vice president of Hale Medical Group, had just been assigned to oversee the Elmsworth restructuring. White, silver hair immaculate, navy tie knotted with mathematical precision. He wasn't a man who attacked. He was a man who made rules. And what made Imani wary was how he always smiled at just the right time, like someone who'd never truly been caught off guard. I worked with Boyd for over a decade, Sterling said. I didn't agree with his methods, but I understood why the system resorted to them. It was survival. Imani replied flatly, I'm not here to help a system survive. I'm here to make it stop killing people in silence. Sterling smiled again. Then I suppose we have much to discuss. And in his tone, she smelled smoke, the kind that comes just before the fire. After the first meeting, Imani proposed sweeping reforms. Immediate halt to patient classification by insurance tier. Formation of an internal task force on systemic bias. Suspension of staff who had signed emergency rejections under Boyd's protocol. The backlash came quicker than expected. The head of internal medicine, a white man with graying temples, walked into her office with a folder. If you stop selective admissions, we'll burn through our budget in a month. If you dig into management, they'll walk. If you push too far, they'll get rid of you again. This time, quietly. Imani rose and pulled a document from her drawer, a denied treatment form for a young girl with a heart condition, a Mexican-American child, the same case this man had canceled due to unclear financials. You sure you want to keep talking? He left, silent, unapologetic. 1 week into Imani's role, Elmsworth behaved like a body jolting back from anaphylaxis. Her reforms triggered instant immune reactions. ER shifts were suddenly understaffed. Veteran doctors called out sick en masse. Whispers spread. Imani was just Hale's PR pawn. Some longtime patients, the VIPS, abruptly transferred out, leaving behind messages like, "We don't want our treatment history reviewed." In a staff meeting, Sterling finally spoke. "We're attacking our own immune system. Reform takes time, but if the body rejects itself, then maybe that body should die." Imani cut in, voice sharp as a scalpel. "And we'll rebuild it, not from disease, but from the right stem cells." She didn't raise her voice. But every sentence sliced through the manufactured civility Elmsworth had cloaked itself in for decades. That night, as Imani left her office, her phone buzzed with a message. "He wants to see you." Alone. No Hale staff. She knew the sender, Cyrus Hale, and he could only mean one person, Alexander Sterling. The meeting was set in a 19th floor lounge, where Cyrus usually closed his biggest deals. Imani entered. Sterling was already seated, 2 glasses of wine poured. No guards, no files, just him, and a half smile. "I suppose you know why I asked for this." Imani didn't sit. "Because you realized I'm not a pawn you can control." He raised his glass slowly. "Number, because I realized you've earned the kind of trust Hale can't buy." She stared him down. "What do you want? A backdoor alliance? A seat on the board in exchange for silence?" He chuckled. "Number, I want you to take the full executive chair, but only if you're ready to survive the sharks." Imani stood tall, never touching the wine. "I don't need power to survive. I need a system where people don't have to die to be heard." Sterling held the smile, but for the first time, it flickered. "You won't last if you go it alone. You need me." Imani nodded. "Maybe, but you need me too, because without me, Hale has no face left to salvage if I walk out publicly." The air turned to ice. "I don't need to swim with sharks," Imani said, stepping toward the door. "I just need to drain their tank." She walked out, leaving Sterling alone. For the first time, speechless. In the hallway, Reynolds was waiting. "Well," he asked, "did you cut a deal?" "No," she replied. "We're not negotiating. We're rebuilding." In the week that followed, Elmsworth began changing, visibly. The patient intake board was restructured. A review team reopened 127 denied emergency cases from the past 3 years. The first free clinic was re-established in what used to be the VIP lounge. Imani stepped out of a morning strategy meeting. In her hands, a hiring list of 15 new staff, including black nurses once discarded for not fitting the image. Naina, now her tech systems assistant, approached with a data brief. Patient retention's up. Positive feedback from low-income communities has risen 60%. But the old doctor network is holding shadow meetings. Looks like a counterattack's coming. Imani glanced over the report, unfazed. Then let them see, this isn't the hospital they used to control. On the folder's cover was a title Reynolds had suggested: Elmsworth Reconstructed, Draft Model for Equitable Healthcare, Imani signed. And below her name, a newly printed line, Interim CEO, authorized to overhaul the entire system. This proposal has not been approved by Kingston Global Ventures. The voice echoed from a speaker at the center of the table. Imani froze. She had just finished presenting Phase 2 of the restructuring, expanding free clinics, reinstating previously dismissed staff. The room, moments ago nodding in agreement, was stunned silent by a voice coming from an unactivated conference device. Everyone glanced around. Sterling raised an eyebrow. Reynolds paused mid-sip. Naina glanced at the control panel. "That's a private line," she whispered. "Level 6 encryption, from the parent group." The voice continued, cold and deliberate. "Ms. Imani, with all due respect, you do not have the authority to implement this reform without clearance from the primary controlling stakeholder." Imani clenched her hand on the table. "I thought I was working for Hale Medical Group." "You are, but Hale Medical Group is only a branch. And the parent of the parent is us." The boardroom fell into silence. On screen, a new logo emerged, a braided metallic circle bearing 3 letters: KGV, Kingston Global Ventures. No one in the room except Reynolds seemed to recognize it. It was a shadow conglomerate known for quietly controlling healthcare networks through layered shell companies. Its founder, Langston Pierce, was a name most had never heard, yet appeared on shareholder lists of nearly every top-tier hospital. Imani stepped closer to the screen. "So Hale was just the face?" The speaker replied, "Precisely. And what you've done at Elmsworth, while ethically commendable, poses significant financial risk." Imani turned to the room. Sterling said nothing, no objections, no explanations. "You knew?" she asked him directly. "From the beginning," he nodded. "Cyrus Hale was the brand, Langston Pierce is the system, and just like that, everyone realized the battle with Boyd was the surface. The real game was only beginning." The boardroom doors swung open. A tall black man in a tailored charcoal suit stepped inside. No announcement, no assistant, but everyone, including Sterling, stood up instantly. Cyrus Kingston, the man behind Kingston Global Ventures. Absent from public life for nearly a decade, his name had existed only in fine print beneath boardroom ownerships. Imani looked at him. His eyes were deep, unreadable. But she knew one thing. He'd been there from the start. Langston smiled faintly. "Imani Brooks Kingston. I've known about you long before you knew I existed." Reynolds frowned. Naina nearly dropped her tablet. "Years ago, I selected you as the first recipient of the Brooks Legacy Fellowship. That scholarship wasn't a coincidence. It was a tribute to your mother, who was once pushed out of the system by the very policies you're now tearing down. I didn't interfere. I didn't help you win. I simply watched and waited for the day you walked into this game by your own will." Imani stood frozen, and suddenly, the puzzle pieces, once scattered, began falling into place. Langston stepped forward. "I pulled you out from Boyd's reach. I provided legal cover, resources, protection. But I'm also the one who holds this system together, and I won't let it collapse over one ideal." Imani remained composed. "My ideal is life, equity, What is it that you fear about that? I don't fear justice. I fear mutation. A system that evolves too fast gets rejected by its own body. You've expanded free care, cut intermediary screening, dropped high-tier patient evaluations. It's noble, but it's not yet stable. Then let me prove it, Imani replied. Not through theory, through numbers, through every life actually saved. Langston studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. I'll give you a chance. 60 days. If you prove your model works, no crashes, no red, you keep going. If not, I pull funding. Imani didn't flinch. Deal. From that day on, Elmsworth was no longer a hospital, it was a living lab. And Imani was no longer just a leader. She was the test, the wager, the variable the power system was now betting on. 60 days, no extensions. Imani ran daily meetings, sometimes past 2 a.m. Naina revamped patient intake workflows. Reynolds led legal reform, rewriting contracts, deleting clauses left behind by Boyd and Sterling. Maria Gonzalez, once fired for failing service etiquette, now ran the free clinic hub. In week 1 alone, over 300 patients were admitted, 71% uninsured. But with every step forward came quiet sabotage. Senior doctors resigned. A private donor group paused their funding, citing concerns over stability. Sterling said nothing, but Imani knew he was counting down, not on a clock, but on the losses. Day 38, Elmsworth's entire analytics system crashed. Nina leapt from her chair, face pale. All financial records, patient logs, interim data, gone. Encrypted. Imani rushed over. Do we have backups? Yes, but someone used admin-level override to breach them. The screen went dark. A single line appeared against the black. That's enough, Ms. Imani. The game ends here. Her jaw tightened. Reynolds was already calling server trace teams. Naina hacked into internal logs. 30 minutes later, the report was in. The account that executed the breach belonged to Alexander Sterling. Imani wasn't surprised, but for the first time her temples burned, not from betrayal, but because the traitor was the man Langston had trusted most. 3 hours later, Imani called an emergency meeting with Langston Pierce. Sterling was present too. Same suit, same stoic stare. Imani cued the security logs. On screen, 2:14 a.m., Sterling entering the server room, attaching an unauthorized device, leaving after 12 minutes. Langston said nothing. Not angry, not shocked. Only one question. Why? Sterling responded calmly. Because I don't believe she can win, and I won't let the Empire fall chasing a noble dream. Imani replied, You didn't destroy my data, you just burned the mirror. She pulled a drive from her coat, the full system backup, separated 2 days earlier. We saw this coming. Sterling stood motionless. Langston turned to Imani. You retain full authority. He no longer represents Kingston Global. Day 60, national headlines read, Elmsworth reinvented, emergency death rate, down 38%, uninsured retention, up 270%. Imani took the stage at the Federal Healthcare Reform Summit. I'm not here to share theory, I'm here to report a fact, that healthcare doesn't have to be a privilege, and a system doesn't have to sell its soul to survive. Langston sat in the front row, his eyes no longer calculating, but quietly affirming. You didn't just preserve the system, he told her after the event. You taught it how to breathe again. Imani replied, I don't want the system to kneel to me. I just want it to stop stepping on people. At her Elmsworth desk, now the pilot base for equitable care, a new map lay spread. 4 hospitals had sent letters. We want to restructure. Just like you. Imani. The voice stopped her mid-stride in the crowded hallway. She didn't need to turn. She recognized it instantly. The voice that began everything. The voice of the man she once saved without knowing his name. Cyrus Hale stood there. No more bandages, no more hollow fatigue. just clarity, and eyes that looked like they'd seen real light for the first time. "I've been watching you ever since," he said. "And today I came to say one final thing, but not for me." Imani nodded. "For the system." The top floor office at Elmsworth, once Boyd's kingdom, was now a hub of strategic reform. No fogged glass, no private safes, just whiteboards filled with blueprints for public healthcare expansion. Imani led Cyrus in. The conference table remained, but no one claimed the head seat. Every voice now held weight. "You once said healthcare needed efficiency," Imani began. "I've proven that equity doesn't slow us down. It unlocks trust." Cyrus looked at the wall map. 5 cities marked in red, each requesting a replication of the Elmsworth model. "You did what I never dared try. I built hospitals. You gave them the right name, a place to heal people, not filter them." Cyrus Hale, once the center of the orbit, a billionaire, a CEO, a man who believed money could save any life, until he lay ignored on a hospital floor. Back then, a nurse who didn't ask his name, didn't demand ID, didn't check protocol, saved him by breaking every rule. "I thought I ran the system," Cyrus admitted, "but I was just tweaking numbers on a rotation board." Imani, you made the system look at the people it had long refused to see." Imani said nothing, because she knew this wasn't flattery. It was a final handoff, from the one who once ruled. "I'm stepping down from the board," Cyrus said. "I'm transferring my shares to the Community Health Fund. You'll have full control." Imani paused. "You don't have to do this. We can do it together." "No," he shook his head. "As long as I remain, there will always be whispers. That you were placed, not chosen. That this was a PR reset." Imani clenched her hands. "And you? Where will you go?" "I'll visit the towns I once rejected, the ones I denied funding because they weren't financially viable. I'll listen, not lead, because I now understand. Listening is leadership." He stood, placing a folder on the table. "This is the executive file for the Quinn Light Foundation. Signed over to you, notarized, with access to dozens of unreleased social initiatives." Imani looked at him. "You no longer just represent the ones pushed out. Now, you're the one rewriting the code." 3 days after the meeting with Cyrus Hale, Imani sat alone in her new office, once Boyd's inner sanctum. Now everything had changed. No leather chairs, no ego portraits, just a whiteboard. She picked up a black marker and wrote, "Care is not conditional. Dignity is not selective." Reynolds entered with plans for expanding health centers in Detroit, Atlanta, and El Paso. City councils approved matching funds, but there's one condition. Imani looked up. "They want me to lead them personally, don't they?" He nodded. "You're no longer the rebel, you've become the architect, and that's the most dangerous role of all." She smiled, not wide, but real. Danger doesn't come from the title, it comes from knowing. Failure is no longer an option. On a Monday morning, Imani received an unexpected notice. Boyd requested a meeting, no longer a director. Now a prisoner awaiting trial, but the law allowed a single meeting, if the other party consented. Reynolds advised, "You don't have to go." He has no power left, but Imani went, not for him, for the part of herself that had once been a victim and needed closure. The room was dim, metal table, yellowed light. Boyd sat, hair shaved short, no longer the smug alpha. His voice cracked. "You won." "I lost," he added. Imani sat across from him. Her face was clear, not with revenge, but with resolution. "I didn't come to hear your confession. I came so you could see me, the woman you once called unfit for the system, and understand. I am the system now." Back at Elmsworth, Imani walked through the hallway where she had once been fired in front of an entire crowd. Now those same people nodded in respect, not for her title, but because they had watched how she fought. In the waiting room, a little Haitian girl sat with her grandmother. She was receiving free treatment. She looked up and waved. "You're the woman from the video, aren't you?" Imani sat beside her. She didn't answer. She just held the girl's small hand, thin, but warm. "Number, I'm just someone trying to make sure no one else waits as long as I did." Down the hall, Maria Gonzalez watched, eyes wet. Reynolds stood next to her and whispered, "They're not just rebuilding a hospital. They're rebuilding the very definition of who deserves to live." On the opening day of the Diana Santos Health Center, the first in the new community healthcare model, soft rain fell across the glass roof. No one left their seat. Imani stepped forward, wearing a white coat tailored for the occasion. She held no speech. She stood silently for a moment, then faced the live TV camera. "If you were ever told you don't deserve to live because you lack a card, a number, a last name, then today I'm here to tell you, you were lied to. You deserve to be saved, and you deserve to believe that you too can save others." Below her, hundreds of newly hired healthcare workers from Black and immigrant communities rose in a standing ovation. Cyrus Hale stood quietly in the back, no microphone, no spotlight, just a smile, for the first time not as the one on stage, but as a witness to a stage that finally made sense: injustice. Some battles don't happen on front lines. They happen behind white hospital walls, around boardroom tables where your name isn't on the agenda, and in the gaze that tells you you don't belong. Imani had no superpower. She had one thing: the choice not to bow her head. And sometimes all it takes is one person who won't bow for the entire system to fall to its knees. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a reminder, even when you're fired, cast out, shut down, you can come back and turn the door that once slammed in your face into an entrance for an entire generation. Imani wasn't born to win. She was taught to be quiet, to endure, to be grateful for whatever chance she was given. But she rewrote that script with her real voice, her real pain, and her unshakable belief that dignity doesn't ask permission to exist. So if you're hearing this during the late shift where no one sees you as valuable, in a meeting where your voice keeps getting cut off, on a hospital bed, or during another sleepless night, remember, you don't need approval to begin. You only need to rise and start telling your story your way.